Hey everyone, welcome to Group Text. My guest today is Sarah Drew, whom you best know from her 10 unbelievable season run as Dr. April Kempner on Grey's Anatomy. She has appeared in movies such as Radio with Cuba Gooding Jr., The Baxter with the amazing Paul Rudd and Elizabeth Banks, and the comedy Mom Nights Out with Patricia Heaton, where she plays a mother who, and I quote, just needs a fucking second. Is that too much to ask? As it turns out, yes, it is. Sarah has appeared in the TV shows Supernatural, Everwood, Cruel Summer, and Mad Men, just to name a few. And the most exciting, her latest series, Amber Brown, a delightful, I just felt like saying that word, coming-of-age family show now streaming on Apple TV. And soon you'll be able to see Sarah in Reindeer Games, a feature film she not only stars in, but love this, women empowerment produced. Please welcome Sarah Drew. Hey, Sarah.
Hi, how are you? Nice
Good.
to see you.
Nice to see you. I have so many questions, but I always like to start at the beginning because it's fascinating to me how people honestly begin. So you were still in high school on Long Island, and you started doing voiceover work. How old were you when that started?
I was in high school, I think. I want to say probably 8th or ninth grade. I don't remember exactly the date that it started. I had gotten hooked up with a manager through an acting class, and some of the other kids in the acting class had this manager, and then the manager just started sending me out for some things when I was in early high school. And that was my intro. I did Daria for throughout high school and throughout college, actually.
How did you come up with the voice, or was it just your voice?
Well, the funny thing is that I was originally just doing a guest spot. I was playing a little girl that I think Daria was babysitting, and I had to sing this song, I can hope and I can dream and I am full of self-esteem, or something like that. Anyway, it was this ridiculous little 8-year-old. So I was doing a younger voice for the 8-year-old, but then the person that they had cast as this character, Stacey Rowe, fell out and couldn't continue on the series. And so they asked me to take over the role. So that's why I wound up on that show for several seasons, is because I did a little tiny guest spot and then it turned into another role that was lasting.
What was the voice?
I honestly, Stacey was just me, but just like a little bit really upset and nervous all the time. So she was constantly on the verge of crying because everything was really, really stressful and upsetting.
Which, as a teenager, not that hard to channel.
No, definitely not. But it's funny if I go back and I remember I had to reprise the role of the little girl several years into the show, and I couldn't find the voice in my own voice of the little girl again, because my voice had changed because I'd gone through so many changes as I was getting older and becoming a woman. It was very, very interesting, that whole journey.
Did your kids ever watch Daria?
No, they have not seen any of Daria. I think there's still some themes in Daria that I'm not quite ready for them. It was more of an adult show. And I just feel like I need to screen it all first. And I don't know when the last time is that I've seen that show. So I'd have to go back and look at it and then see which ones I could show them.
Okay. Do you think they would recognize your voice?
Oh, totally. I think they would. I think that they would hear it, but who knows, actually.
It's going to be an interesting experiment.
Yeah, totally.
Something else I found really interesting, because I was from LA. My parents moved here when I was 3, and I got shipped back east to school. You went from Long Island to University of Virginia, and when you were there, it was not, now it's like everybody wants to go to UVA. But when you went, not many kids from the Northeast went south.
Yeah. It was much more of a Southern school, yeah.
What was that like coming from the Northeast? Because I know coming from Los Angeles, and even though I'd spent a lot of time back east, being thrust into University of Pennsylvania and Penn, which was such a Northeast school, was a bit of a culture shock.
Yeah. I mean, for me, we lived the first 6 years of my life in Charlottesville, Virginia. So we still had family friends that were there that I was immediately sort of welcomed into the community. And my parents had lived there for 6 years, and my mom had gone to UVA for grad school. So I had a lot, and we'd still do, we'd been doing family vacations with some of the families from Charlottesville for a while. So it felt kind of like going home. And for me, I don't know that I ever really felt like a New Yorker. You know, I always kind of liked living in the suburbs. And so it didn't feel crazy different. I mean, other than the fact that there were some really strong Southern accents in the house that I lived in.
Yeah. Well, and I was gonna say, and very different clothing.
Yes. But at that point in my life, I had never even thought about clothing. I never thought about fashion. I didn't own a curling iron or a blow dryer or a stitch of makeup until the end of college, when I was launching into my career for real. And I started meeting with agents and managers, and they're like, you need to figure this out.
I always love knowing, do you remember your freshman roommate?
Yes, her name is Eunice Lee. And she was, we worked really well together because I spent a lot of time outside of I was doing theater, and then I was at classes, and I was always doing social things. And we didn't really forge a very strong friendship, but she was quiet and a good roommate. And we both respected each other and respected each other's space. And so it was actually a really good scenario for both of us.
Yeah, I ended up in a single, thank God. Being an only child.
I mean, can you imagine having to dive into living with someone in the same room after growing up completely with all autonomy over your personal space? That would be a shock.
But then I lived in a quad sophomore year.
Yeah.
And then for my junior and senior year, I lived in an 11-bedroom house with 3 bathrooms.
Yeah.
And it was a couple of girls and a bunch of my guy friends. And I remember so clearly freaking out at the guys on my floor about being clean in the bathroom.
Oh, I don't think I could have lived with any guys. I lived in a house of girls. There were 18 of us living in one house my senior year.
Was it a sorority house?
It wasn't. It was near sorority row, but it was a whole bunch of girls that just all wanted to live together. So we kind of made our own sorority, but it was not in the Greek system at all. But I had the same roommate second, third, and fourth year, we were each other's maids of honors in our weddings and stuff like that.
That's so sweet.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, my friends from the house I lived in are still my closest friends.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? And that doesn't happen to everybody.
No, I have a few. I don't have any real contact anymore with any of my high school friends, but I have like a group of 4 girls that I did theater with. Actually, my roommate was not one of them that I did theater with. She was in another sort of community that I was a part of. But I'm still in touch with her, and then I'm in touch with these 4 other girls, very closely in touch with them. And they're the ones that I did theater with in college.
Isn't that awesome when those friendships stay?
Yes. Oh my, there is nothing like history in friendship and longevity. I mean, especially in our industry, we're constantly meeting new people, and there are these little spurts of relationships that like feel really close for a couple of weeks, and then you move on to the next thing. And, you know, you may work with 1 or 2 of them again down the road, several years down the road. But in terms of really being known and really belonging to a group where you can be exactly who you are, I reconnected with those 4 girls on a weekly Zoom over COVID. And it became all of us looked forward to that hour and a half that we had on Wednesdays at 5:30 where we'd get our glass of wine and come out into our private space away from our families. And that was like a sacred hour and a half of just, this is what is happening in our lives, and what we're going. And we kind of, as the world opened back up again, we've lost that. And I miss that because we were just like too busy to set that aside. But I miss it. It was a very sweet thing.
Yeah, we had Thursday evening cocktails with a whole bunch of us on, like, someone would put out the invitation each week on our massive group. And then whoever showed up.
Oh, that's so fun.
But you guys sound like you're nice. We were a bunch of snarky, overeducated assholes trying to always one up each other. So I think the vibe was a little bit different.
Might have been a little different. We did a lot of like crying and sharing vulnerabilities.
Oh no, that's what not at all what ours was. Another thing I found really interesting was literally right after college, you started working.
Yeah. I mean, that was so wild because I have my mom to thank. She encouraged me to do this musical theater program in New York City in the summer between my second and third year of college. And I discovered doing that musical theater program that I was not cut out for musical theater. Just discovered that was not what I should be doing. Although now my son is really into musical theater now. And now I'm like getting reinvigorated. I wish I had trained more. I wish I'd done more dance. I wish I'd done more vocal training. I wish that I'd been able to have that in my wheelhouse. But I will say, doing that program that my mom encouraged me to do is what started my whole career. And it was because we had a casting director from Bernie Telsey Casting come to do a masterclass with us one day. And thus far in the camp, all in the summer program, all we'd ever been working on were songs. We'd not worked on any monologues. I'm a much stronger actor than I am a singer. And I was in the bathroom about to go into this master class and made a split-second decision to pull out a monologue that I just had in my back pocket that I just knew backwards and forwards instead of doing two songs. I was the only one in the class that did a monologue instead of a song for this casting director. And it was the best decision I've ever made in my life because she saw something in me, and then that office started bringing me in for auditions. And the third audition they brought me in for was to play Juliet in a production of Romeo and Juliet at the McCarter Theater in Princeton, New Jersey, which was then I got the role and I did this play the summer before in the first 5 weeks of my fourth year of college. And in fact, I at first turned down the audition opportunity because it conflicted with my fourth year of college.
Yeah, and no one wants to miss senior year.
No. And Will Cantler, who I think still works at Bernie Telsey Casting, called me and said, if I have to drive to Virginia and put you in my car and drive you to New York to audition for this, I will do that because this is not to be taken lightly. Come to New York and audition for this. And I did. And my drama department advisor allowed me to do the show as an independent study. So I got 3 credits to do it by keeping a journal and all these things. And I was reviewed in the New York Times and in Variety. And as a result, I had agents and managers calling me. So I was all set up with my agent basically as I was entering into my fourth year of college, and started auditioning for a few things while I was finishing college. But then, I booked radio just a couple months after graduating.
Do you look back and you've got so many friends, so many people in the business, and you hear these stories like, oh, and I waited tables and this, and you're like, I can't relate. But do you realize, especially in hindsight, how unusual your story is?
It's bananas. It is. There's so many moving pieces. It felt very serendipitous, blessed. I mean, whatever word you want to use, but just it felt like all the pieces fell at exactly the right thing, the split-second decisions that were made to lead to the next thing. And I mean, it's a Cinderella story. And I was fully expecting to be walking into waitress actress thing. That was my plan. I was just like, I'm going to go to New York. I'm going to try to get myself in front of people. I was fully ready to do whatever it took. And then it just was sort of like, I mean, thank you, Mom. Thank you, God. Thank you.
You must have been really exceptional in a previous life. That's all I'm going to say on that. You must, like, you've evolved, like, if you through all the different levels. Yeah. I mean,
like, I'm just totally, I know, what's the next life going to be?
I know you'll probably be back to being an amoeba. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
So I want to talk a little bit about your latest series, Amber Brown, and it is doing great. And from so many, I have a son, so not our wheelhouse, but from all my friends with daughters, it's become something they watch together.
Yeah. Oh, that's so nice.
What drew you to it?
The script. I mean, really, Bonnie Hunt wrote the most incredible script. And when I read that pilot episode, I was so struck by a few things. I found it incredibly charming, but also moving. I thought that there was there's this heartbeat of love and kindness that is sort of in every interaction. You're watching people who are real humans doing their best, sometimes failing, but always committed to repairing. And that to me is my whole philosophy as a parent myself. So I felt very connected to Sarah Brown. And what I really loved about the show too is I loved the vulnerability with which Amber does these direct to camera video diaries where you really see the inner workings, all the vulnerabilities, all the struggles. She's saying all the things that kids are sometimes afraid to say out loud to their parents or to their friends, that they sometimes just bottle up and then it comes out in all kinds of different ways. And here we have this beautiful model of expressing all of that stuff, of getting it out on the table and wondering and asking the big questions. And after walking through this pandemic with my children, they asked some big, deep, heavy, sometimes very dark questions during that time, especially my son, who's older, just in trying to wrap their brains around injustice in the world and the giant that is COVID, that is so out of our control, and the monotony of what can we even look forward to? What is life if there's nothing to look forward to because we don't know when this is going to end? I mean, they're just big questions. And I haven't seen another show where a child is exploring those big questions. And I think they're doing it more than we all realize. So it all resonated with me in a really powerful way. And I was so excited to work with Bonnie Hunt also.
I'm a huge Bonnie Hunt fan.
Yes,
huge.
Me too.
How old are your kids?
10 and 7.
So yeah, the 10-year-old, I assume, is the one that was really asking those tough questions.
Yes. And it's come out with my 7-year-old in other ways, in like anxieties that have cropped up. Like I'm a worry about is my mom or dad going to pick me up on time at the end of school? And it's like, we've never once been late, but we have been anxious for 2.5 years. And so have our children, and we sometimes go, oh, they'll be fine. They're resilient, but really they're going through really big things and oftentimes don't know how to articulate those things. So having words to articulate it for them, spoken from the mouth of this gorgeous, brilliant, vulnerable, artistic powerhouse that is Carson Rose, it's a gift. I think it's a gift to the world. It's a gift to kids. And I just watched the whole series with my kids, and I spent most of the time just watching them watch the show. They're laughing hysterically at times. They have certain characters that they're in love with. My son just keeps saying, Mommy, oh my God, this is so relatable. Everything about this is so relatable. And then he says, I was like, it makes me so happy that you enjoy this show so much. And he goes, somebody not enjoy this show? You'd have to be a pretty dark person to not enjoy this show.
Oh, you are going to have your hands full when he's a teenager.
Woo!
If he's already using those kinds of words.
He's very, very articulate, this kid. Has always been. It's fun.
So you're married, 2 children. Amber she's single and struggling with things. Now, I was a single parent raising a son and trying to date.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly complicated. Did you have to go and talk to friends who were in the situation? I mean, how did you find the character and the sort of stress and angst that comes with it when your home life is so traditional?
Yeah. I have so many people in my life that are either in the middle of divorce, have just gotten, have divorce has just been finalized, have started dating.
It's awful. It's awful.
Yeah. Oh,
It's
I
awful.
know. No, I've heard all of the stories. I have been the sounding board for so many horror stories and so much despair, certainly despair at times, but then also the excitement and the newness. I have someone in my life who is very, very close to me, who went through a very difficult divorce recently and is on the other side of it and has 2 kids, and they went through it also. And I heard every piece of it all the way through that journey. So for me, in a lot of ways, this show is a love letter to that person. Because now that person is in a new relationship that's delightful and beautiful and vibrant and hopeful, and all of that was happening while I was shooting the show. So I had a very clear, visceral taste of what that experience was. All the custody stuff. There's a scene where, when her ex moves back into town and she has Amber go to his house for the night, and she has her sister come over, and she just this is so hard. This house, it feels so empty and so quiet and so sad. And do you think she misses me when she's over there? And all of those questions are things that I have heard this friend talk to me about in great detail. So for me, it's a love letter for all of the kids and parents going through huge upheavals and trying to navigate them and figure out how to love each other well in the process.
So let's talk a minute about Grays, because I'm always fascinated when someone has to join a cast of an already successful show, and with Grey's Anatomy was already having drama behind the scenes. I mean, it's first of all, how did you get the job?
Sure. Yeah, it's actually a funny story because it's similar to the Daria situation. I had just done 2 episodes on Private Practice. So that's how I had met the Shondaland world. And then Shonda had cast me in a pilot that didn't get picked up called Inside the Box. And I had shot that. And a couple months after that, she had actually a different role in mind for me, which was the character that George saves when he gets hit by the bus at the end of season 5. And so that character is in the finale of season 5 and the premiere of season 6, but she's not a doctor. There's no chance for her to come back into the world. And I couldn't do it because I was currently shooting something else. This is another serendipitous kind of situation. So and that was just an offer. That was Shonda knew my work and offered me this 2-episode arc. Couldn't do it. Come to a couple months later, and they're like, we have this other role. It's a 2-episode arc. Do you want to come and play for 2 episodes? I knew walking in, my character was going to get fired. My character got fired the 2nd episode. So I went off, I did my 2 episodes, and then I left and I went to do I was doing Mad Men and Glee at the time. I did a bunch of other stuff. And I got a call from my team the morning after that episode aired saying they want to bring you back and it might turn into a series regular. And I was like, what?
Exactly. Huh?
What? So then all of the rest of season 6 was basically every episode was an audition. I'm scouring the pages going, did they give me anything interesting to do so that I could show what I could do? I hope I can prove to them that I should stay. And it was just that whole season where I didn't know if I was going to stay or not. And then I got picked up to become a series regular. So crazy.
And you're 10 years.
Yeah, well, 9 years, although I did go back the last 2 seasons just for a little quick, but 9 full years on the show. Yeah, I know. It's bananas. It's not something that happens anymore in this industry.
No, not at all. And like I said, you walked into sort of the tail end of a lot of drama. I mean, there's been books written about the Grey's Anatomy drama. Yet it was still a very tight-knit group, but it was very, very cliquey. How'd you negotiate that? Because you are so sweet and so open and cheerful and all these things. And you walk into, if you talk to this person, you can't talk to that person. And if you hang out with them, you can't hang out with them. I mean, it was like, from what I've heard, it sounds like bad high school.
Well, it's interesting because that's what everybody told me I was walking into. But my experience of it wasn't that. I think you kind of, not always, but you have the power to kind of create your own experience in a lot of places, I think. I walked in with a lot of enthusiasm and joy and gratitude for this opportunity. And the people that also had that gravitated toward me, and the people that didn't gravitate toward me. So I just kind of, some of the people, like Sada Ramirez was the first person to be extremely welcoming to me. She made a big to-do for my 30th birthday. She made a point to be like, you are my friend. I'm taking you under my wing. And it was such a gift. Like, they were so kind to me. And again, I didn't experience the cliquey drama. I just sort of stayed in my lane and stayed in my world and did my work and hung out with the people who wanted to hang out with me, And it was great. I was so excited to be there. I was such a huge fan of the show, and I was so excited for the work that they were giving me to do, that they were writing for me, that it was great.
So on Grey's, you went through a number of husbands and romantic interests. I mean, it's always hard for someone who's married to, have a partner having to watch them be intimate or fake intimate with another person. You ran through them.
Well,
how did you keep coming home and go, honey, guess what? New boyfriend this week.
It's funny. My husband proposed to me while I was playing Juliet, which is probably the most romantic character in the history of romance.
Yes.
But
she dies, so not a happy ending.
But it is a lusty, high energy, high intensity, romantic thing that I was doing every day, every show for several weeks, of my life. And so in a lot of ways, and my husband's not in the industry, but he knew what he was getting himself into in terms of these fake relationships I'd have to foster in the longevity of my career. And it's interesting because the first several years of our marriage, which is also the first several years of my career, we had to go to therapy. We had to figure out rules for boundaries. I had to figure out how to navigate the weirdness of how showmances happen all the time, right? So then how do I protect my relationship and my marriage while also maintaining chemistry on set with the person that I need to have chemistry with? And what does all of that look like? And we had to come up with rules in order to protect my heart and protect my husband's heart, but also protect my career. And it's worked. I mean, it's a weird thing we do. It's a weird thing we do. But
if he proposed to you while you were playing Juliet, so he was like your college sweetheart.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. We met when I was 18. We were working at a little youth camp, a winter like ski camp. The winter break of my first year of college, we met. And then he lived in Boston while I was in school in Virginia, and he started writing me handwritten letters. He wooed me for 8 months through handwritten letters.
Oh my
and
God.
Then in a letter asked for my email address. And then we started emailing, but that was like 6 months into handwritten letters. And then in an email asked for my phone number after several more weeks of just emailing every day. Then he called me for the first time. The first time he called me was like months and months and months after we'd been corresponding, like old timey people. And then, and then so he called me, and then on the phone call said, could I come out and visit? And he came out to visit, and he came to visit my whole family because I was on summer break with my whole family living in my family house. And he stayed in the little the weird basement guest room. And we took the train into New York and sat in the TKTS lines and got tickets to see the play Wit with Judith Light. We went out to dinner.
Brilliant play.
Brilliant play.
Brilliant.
And I knew that I was in love when I looked over at him and there were tears streaming down his face. I was like, a man who can feel and is moved by good art. Yes. And we rode the train home, and he held my hand on the train, and we got back to my parents' house, and he kissed me outside the bathroom. And that was it. It was, we were long distance our whole relationship, and until after Romeo and Juliet. He moved to Charlottesville to do a job while we were planning our wedding.
That is so romantic. Did he have good penmanship?
He does have good penmanship. I made him as my wedding gift to him was a book of all of our letters and emails of our whole sort of courtship. I mean, it's funny, call it a courtship, because that's kind of what it was. He was very careful with everything. He was really careful. He was already out of college, and he did not want to steal my college experience. He didn't want to be that older guy that came in and deprived me of the fullness of my college experience. So he was very careful in everything that he did, in the way that he pursued me. He's such a good man.
You brought up showmance, which I don't think people really know. How do you balance it? How have you guys kept that you have your life and your heart and his heart, but you still have to, flirt's the wrong word, but you still have to keep chemistry with someone on set. How do you do that?
I mean, there were some practical things, like early in my career, if I was on location, I thought it was perfectly fine to run lines with my co-star in somebody's hotel room, right? And I've never crossed any lines, but it just doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good for my husband. It's just, so we have a rule where, like, if I'm on location somewhere, we find a meeting room if we need to run lines, or we go to a restaurant to run lines there. But there's no ever being alone in a closed off space. So that's like a practical thing that is just a way to protect everybody's hearts and set clear boundaries for the person that I'm working with. And then the other big thing that was really important to Peter early on is when I would go off on location, it was like going to summer camp. You know, you're working with all of these new people. Everybody's on their best behavior. Everybody's beautiful. Everybody's, shiny and charismatic, because those are the people that get cast in the movies. It's just, everything is heightened, and nobody has the time to see anybody's shit, So all you're seeing is this fantastical version, heightened camp experience of other people, so excited to be doing this thing that they love so much, right? And then your spouse is back at home handling all the nitty gritty life junk, like
changing diapers
and all of that stuff. And we didn't have kids. We had 9 years. So we figured this stuff out before we had kids. But so we didn't have kids yet, but it would be so lonely for him, because I would just disappear. And
Right.
so one of the things that we are committed to is just checking in on one another. Through me specifically making a point to check in multiple times a day, just a quick little text. I'm thinking of you. I love you. Little picture from the set, or what, like little things like that, so that he's welcomed into the experience. And it's not like I've just escaped my life to go do something fun. It's like, no, we're integrating this. This is work. This is home. I think another big thing for me, that just in the process of being in this industry for so long and having and doing the whole camp like thing over and over and over again, is you begin to see it for what it is. It loses its like heightened. I was just recently, when Outer Banks first came out, I was like looking at all of those kids on their Instagram feeds, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're having the time of their lives. They're on this show together. They're all obsessed with each other. They're best friends forever. They're probably going to get tattoos.
No,
but yeah,
not.
but here's the thing. Like, that's the perception, right? And
Right.
I, as a person who's 20 years older, was like, yeah, I remember what that euphoric feeling was, but none of it's real. It's all false intimacy because you don't really know each other, and it's going to be over really soon, and you don't see it when you're in it. But now that I have that perspective, when I'm in something like that, I'm like, I'm at work, and I have my whole life, and I have my kids, and I have my husband, and I have my community, and I have my neighborhood, and I have all of these things that I'm so tethered to emotionally and spiritually, that I can see what it all is. That's real. This is fake. It's delightful and fun, but it's fake. And I know that now. But it was hard to understand that when I was younger.
Speaking of real, you got to work with Jesse Williams. And a video of him naked on stage was leaked before the Tonys.
Yes.
Have you seen this? And have you seen that before? Because you guys, were you impressed as everybody else?
I don't feel like I should comment on any of that. I am going to leave that to the masses to have their field day with it. All I can say is I went to see his show, and it was amazing. And also the other thing that I will say about that whole experience is everybody's naked on that show, in that show. You get, I mean, there were like 12 guys standing for like 20 minutes naked, showering before Jesse's scene comes out. So it's, it's not as shocking as everybody's made such a big to-do about it, but it's just part of the show,
But he is so extraordinarily handsome. And, you're like, it's just an odd way to see someone that you've worked with so many years. Suddenly you're like, wow, this is awkward. Yeah, eyes up here, eyes up here.
It's a little awkward. It was, yes, it's a little awkward, but also I found it to be brave, that all of those guys had chosen to do this show where they have to be so exposed. I mean, that was my main reaction to it, was like, that is very brave. And I don't think I could do that. It's one thing about like doing nudity in a closed set with cameras, and it's another thing to be
and intimacy coordinators and
yes,
intimacy garments that nobody sees.
Exactly. It's another thing to just be fully in front of a massive audience of people and lay it all out there. I mean, that takes a lot of courage. So I applaud him for doing that. Not to mention the need that they all have to like stay in shape. Because like, I mean, if I had to be in a bathing suit in my movie that I just shot, and I was so stressed out about what I was going to look like in the bathing suit. And that's still some pretty significant coverage there. Yeah. So yeah.
I'm just thinking about when you go backstage to say hi, you have to be so careful with your words because everything could be taken in a different way. But again, that's my comedic brain going, nice work. Good job. Wow, you're fit. I couldn't take my eyes off you. You owned the stage. But that's my sick brain.
It's a funny thing. It's a funny, it's a weird and funny thing what we do.
Keep your eyes, concentrate on keeping your eyes up.
Eyes up here.
Exactly. You've got a new movie coming out, Reindeer Games, in which you star and produce.
And I wrote it.
And you wrote it?
Yes, it's my writing debut. Yes.
How long did it take you to write, and how long did it take you to sell it?
So I had just done another fun holiday rom-com with Lifetime with these two producers and a whole team, director and actors that I loved. And I got really inspired while I was shooting that movie to go home and come up with my own story just for fun. Like whether it was going to go anywhere or not, it was just fun. And for me, it's become this tremendous artistic outlet for the in-between times, for the times when I'm at home and I'm not shooting something and I have like a big chunk of time. This has been a new way to kind of take initiative and get to call my own shots and things like that. But so I came up with an outline for this story and I pitched it to my two producers from that movie several weeks after we had wrapped on that. And I was expecting, we should probably hire a writer and write it. And they said, go buy Final Draft and write it yourself. You have such a clear image and picture of all the characters. I'd even written bits and pieces of dialogue in my pitch, but they're like, we see the world. It's so vibrant. Go get Final Draft and sit down and write it. And I wrote my first draft in 3 weeks. I'm so grateful to those women for inspiring me to do that and telling me to do it, because I probably would have just passed it off and tried to hire someone else to write it. But so that was the end of 2019. And then we started pitching it around. And then of course the COVID hit. So nothing happened in 2020, but at the beginning of 2021, they had pitched it to Lifetime, and Lifetime was excited to do it, and they wanted to do it as part of a 2-picture deal with me for 2 different holiday movies this year and next year. And so we were off to the races. I signed on to do this deal, and then when December hit last year, that's when we really started getting going with all the network notes on the script, and so then
those are always so fun. Those are so fun. Is directing next?
Well, so I also have already directed. I directed a web series for Grey's Anatomy, my final year on the show. It was called Grey's Anatomy B Team, and it was actually nominated for an Emmy. So I got to go to the Emmys with that. It was a little 6-episode web series. So each episode was like 2.5 minutes long. It took us 2 days to shoot it. And then we did all the posts on it and everything. But yeah, that was a massive surprise. I was already off the show. I'd already said my goodbyes. And then I get this, I found out that it was nominated on a tweet. I didn't even, nobody called me. I was like, oh, wait, we got nominated?
Like, huh?
Yeah. So I hope to do more. I was shadowing also on this movie that I just wrote and produced and starred in. And I shadowed on Amber Brown. So I am interested in directing more. Right now, I'm working on 2 other writing projects, and I'm still in post for Reindeer Games. It's actually called Reindeer Games Homecoming. That was the title that they needed to have. So I'm more focused on that stuff right now. But I want to get back into directing for sure.
Amber, the show Amber Brown is a huge hit. You are delightful. And you know what? I know if this is all evolution and you come back as an amoeba, you are going to be the most cheerful amoeba ever.
Grateful. Just grateful to be swimming around.
Look at me. I can self-replicate. This is all good. Sarah, it has been such a pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you for having me.